Hey guys, welcome back. Glad to have you here like always. Today I want to discuss with you all a topic that many of you ask me questions about, and it is how to get pairs into breeding condition, or how it is that I'm able to breed such a large variety of different species of finches. And this is something that has come with time. I've been doing this for a very long time. I started breeding African waxbills back in 2009, and after I started with my first pair, I was hooked. And this is something that over the years I've gradually learned how to breed some of these species and some of the things that are necessary in order to get them into the proper breeding conditions and successfully getting clutches of chicks from them. And one of the things that you have to learn is that this hobby is based on trial and error. There are no two species or no two pairs that are alike. So what may work for me may not work for you, and vice versa. Since no two pairs are alike, every single pair you have to treat them differently, because the majority of the time, out of 5 pairs from one species, you may get two that are willing to breed, giving all of them the same exact enclosure, the same exact foods, and so on. You may only get one or two that are willing to breed, while the other ones just stand by and don't do anything. And one of the reasons why this happens is because there are a lot of factors that go into what pairs are willing to breed and what pairs are not willing to breed. And you have to look at a variety of different things. One of the main things that you have to try to focus on when you get your birds is to know exactly what age they may be. Now, I know that this is very difficult to know what age the birds are if they are not banded, but one of the ways that you can do this is by looking at the overall appearance of the bird, checking their feather condition, looking at their feet, and so on. You can kind of generalize or get a general idea if the pair or if the bird that you have is a bit too old or if it might be in good condition to breed. So, one of the first things is to try to find birds that are in the right age to breed. If they're too young or if they're too old, they're not going to breed. Second thing is you want to focus on their condition. If the bird is molting or it's not in breeding condition, it will not go and breed. So always make sure that your bird is in full breeding condition. Now, in order to get your bird into breeding condition, you have to give them the proper foods, and each species will require different things to get them into the proper condition. But as a general rule, as long as you increment the protein slowly for the species, most of them, if not all, will get into the proper breeding condition. Now, the two main methods that I use to increase their protein and get them into proper condition has always been sprouted seeds and egg food. Sprouted seeds can be given on a daily basis, since sprouted seeds do not tend to get any of these species obese or overweight, while the egg food is only given twice a week at most to get them into the proper breeding condition. Now, another aspect that you have to focus on is the enclosure that you are putting these birds. As a general rule, African waxbills need a whole lot more space than Australian species, because the Australian species are a bit more domesticated in a different sense than the African waxbills. So while you may be able to breed a pair of Gouldians, a pair of stars or owls in a 24 by 16 by 16 cage, this would not be an adequate size cage for an African waxbill, like, for example, red-billed firefinch, red-cheeked cordon bleu, or orange-breasted waxbill. These species need ample space in order to feel secure and go to nest and raise their own chicks. So for these African waxbills, I like to use larger cages. For them, I usually use the 32 by 18 by 18 for some species. And let me clarify this. As a general rule, I've had good success with the red-billed firefinches breeding in the 32 by 18 by 18 size cages, but this is because I've been working with the red-billed firefinches for a very long time. And we're talking about, these are birds that are now F3s, F4s. They're not first generation, they're fourth, fifth generation. They're used to cages. If you are focusing on wild-caught birds or birds that are not used to cages, you have to try to give them the most space possible in order to successfully breed them. So one of the ways that I do this is by combining two cages together. I'll combine two of the 32 by 18 by 18 cages into one and make larger flights for these species. This is what I use for, at the moment, the Dybowski twin spots and the lavenders, and I have been having great success because of the size of these cages. But the size of the cage isn't all. The birds still need to have privacy and they need to feel secure in their enclosure. And the way that you can do this is by adding shrubs to the enclosure, any type of artificial shrub where they're able to hide into. And some of the artificial shrubs that I put inside of these cages are taken off of fake Christmas trees, and I turn these into round balls where the birds are able to hide in between these little spots, and they're able to make their own nest in these areas. So now that we know that we need to get a pair that is of the right age in order to successfully breed, and we need to make sure that we give them the proper enclosure, what would be next? Well, next is one of the most underlooked aspects of breeding these birds, and that is the amount of daylight that they receive. When it comes time to breed, I hear a lot of people focusing on the diet, they focus on the housing, they focus on the age of the bird, and so on, but I hear very little as far as how many daylight hours do these birds need in order to successfully condition them to get them to breed. Now you have to understand that light hours or daylight plays a huge role in the breeding process of birds. They are stimulated by the amount of daylight that they receive in order to get them into breeding condition. So you can give them a big cage, you can offer them the proper nutrition, but if you do not give them the right daylight hours, they won't get into breeding condition and they won't perform as they should. Now, as a general rule of thumb, you want your birds to receive around 14 hours of daylight in order to get them into breeding condition. The daylight hours that I give my birds here is I turn the lights in the aviary at 6 a.m. and they shut off at 8 p.m. And this is enough to get these birds into breeding condition. After the breeding season is over, you're able to slowly decrease the amount of daylight hours that you're giving them, and this is usually what will induce a molt and get them into the molting stage and out of that breeding condition, along with a change in their diet. Another very common question that I receive is how much live food do they need, and do they need a lot of live food in order to be successful at raising their own chicks? With Australian species, live food is not as important as it is with African species, especially when we get into the harder species like the greenback twin spots, the melbas, the petilias. These are all species that are very insectivorous, so live food makes or plays a huge role in the production of chicks and in order to get these parents to successfully raise their own young. But there are chances of you successfully getting these birds to raise their own chicks without the introduction of live food. For the birds that I keep in the outdoor aviary, they do get live food like termites, ant eggs, and some of the smaller insects that they're able to find throughout the aviary. But for the ones that are in the indoor bird room, these birds do not receive any types of live food, and I've been able to, over the years, successfully breed a variety of waxbills without live food. Now you do have to offer them other sources of protein, and these can be based off of the species depending on what they like. You can give them egg food, you can give them freeze-dried insects like bloodworms, mealworms, crickets, and these I usually will crush and I will mix it in with the egg food. Now some species are a little bit pickier than others, so this is one of those things where you have to play it by sight, and depending on what your species likes to eat is what you will offer them. I've had some species that prefer bloodworms, but they won't touch any of the mealworms. So you have to kind of go with the flow, see what the pair likes, and begin to offer that to them. If you get them used to these certain types of food, it will be more likely for them to go ahead and feed their own young. One of the biggest things that we need to learn as breeders and hobbyists alike is to adapt and overcome to certain situations that we face in our aviaries. And one of the biggest problems that we all face at one point or another is tossed chicks. This is something that is natural. Birds will, at one point or another, toss the chicks that they have in the nest. And while some may have an extremely good success with a certain species, you may be doing horribly where your pairs are tossing. Now this could be due to a variety of reasons, and getting down to the root cause can be very hard because, like I said, no two species are alike. But when this happens, you do have to look at a variety of different things. You have to look at the age of the birds, how much experience they have, is their enclosure the proper size, are they receiving the proper nutrition, how many light hours are they getting, and so on and so on. Even something as simple as where they are located. I've had species that prefer to be in a certain spot of the bird room. They may do extremely well when they're in a cage that is up high, but if they are transferred to a cage that is lower, they may begin to toss their chicks or vice versa. Once a pair tosses, you have to try and decide and see what it is that you're going to do with this pair, the remaining chicks, and the chick that was tossed. And over the years, this has always been a very common question that everybody has. If I find a tossed chick and it's still alive, should I put it back in the nest? Well, this is where you start to encounter problems because the pair has tossed for a reason. There's an obvious reason why this pair decided that they did not want to take care of this chick, whether it's because the chick that they tossed was sick, it had some sort of deformity which would eventually die in the wild, so they knew it shouldn't continue to feed it, whether it was because the pair felt insecure in their enclosure, whether it was because they didn't have enough adequate nutrition to take care of that chick, so they decided to toss one and take care of the rest of the chicks they had in the nest, and so on and so on. There are endless possibilities as to why a pair may have tossed. So what I like to do personally is when I find a tossed chick, I never place it back into the nest because it's only a matter of time, and over the years I've learned that usually when I place the chick back into the nest, the father will go back in there and eventually retoss the chick, and by the time that you find it, it's too late and that chick has passed away. So one of the things that I do once I find a tossed chick is I place it under the care of society finches or Bengalese finches. And these birds are amazing as foster parents. They take great care of other species of finches. And if you don't know exactly how it works or how to set up society finches to foster, I will leave a link in the description box below where I made a video talking about society finches and explaining to you guys exactly the process of fostering and how it is that I use them in my aviary to take care of species that are tossed or species that I know will toss or are bad parents, and how I transfer these eggs or transfer the chicks once I find them or before, because with some of these pairs I already know that they will toss eventually, so it's only a matter of time and you might as well save the chicks. So this is a great way to make sure that you get numbers up in your aviary by using society finches and you don't lose the chicks that were tossed or the chicks that are going to be tossed from pairs that have already proven to be bad parents. Alright guys, well this is going to be the end of the video. Hopefully these tips are helpful for you guys if you're having trouble breeding a specific species. Like I said before, remember that this is trial and error. You can only learn from your experiences, so continue doing different things and changing things up to see what helps you. Now take some of these tips and try to apply them in your breeding, and hopefully they will help you surpass certain difficulties that some of these pairs may be giving you. Like always, if you've enjoyed the video, remember to hit the like button. Consider subscribing also if you haven't done so already, as this is something that continues to help the channel grow and it motivates me to continue making more videos like this one that will hopefully continue to help you guys out in the future. Like always, I hope that you all have a wonderful day and we will see each other in the next video.